How did he make his money? We still don't know how he made his money. Let's think about that for a second. So they're going to force that bill out of committee, right, onto the floor for a full vote. Today, that petition is tied to the push for transparency, the release of records and documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein, his network, his associates, and his finances. They're not looking for the list. Forget the list. You can't listen to what they're telling you all the time. It's not about the list of all the people that, my list and they did all these things. No. Because there is no list. But they are transactions. In fact, some of them are starting to come out in some of the emails that you've seen. And we're gonna have to talk about the prince again, the former prince, because he may actually bring down the whole monarchy in the UK because of what he did. Because obviously they're saying, "Well, you guys didn't know anything." Essentially, the release of those records and documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein. So they want to know the finances. That's the question. So this is not about one man anymore. It's about the power, the privilege, and the secrecy and the system that protected themselves. But now I'm telling you, that might be done. That might be over because lots of people want to know. Washington and Wall Street are under pressure. So how is it going to play out in Washington? Certain members of Congress are pressing hard for disclosure, including the top one MAGA person, Taylor Greene, right, was being completely discredited by the president. She was one of the people that signed that petition. One of the few Republicans that did. Their argument: the public has a right to see how elite networks operate, how institutions fail, and how oversight may have been lacking. Not just in the US, we're also talking in the UK. Now, you're seeing it more in the UK because they're further down the US, but the same thing that's happening over there is going to happen over here. Mark my words. Right? They took the prince out of the prince business. They took him out of his 30-room mansion. And now not only they said you can't use your title, you don't even have your titles, and we're removing it from you. So don't say you're not using them. That's not good enough anymore. You're out. And now they're looking at all the deals, all the things that he was allowed to do by the queen and by the current king. And frankly, they've got a lot to answer themselves. Why did you allow him to do the things that he did? Why did you didn't know. You did not know. And now, of course, these emails are coming out. Those people are talking. And they said, he did all these. He invited prostitutes to Buckingham Palace. No, that can't be true. This is hearsay. Okay, fine. Be careful. On Wall Street and in finance, the stakes are likewise high. Why? Because Epstein's connection weren't only personal. They were transactional. They were investment, partnership deals, access to elite circles. Releasing the files threatens to expose shadowed, the money and the influence. This is why that 218 votes is extremely important. So Buckingham Palace and the monarchy, for a bit of fun, quote unquote, the scandal touches, another realm, the British monarchy. Allegations have emerged suggesting, listen to this, that royal residences and networks may have been used in ways that blur the line between privilege and impunity. And don't forget, the monarchy is basically working for the people, meaning that they're using, what do you think they make their money from? They get, part of the taxes are being paid to them to do all these things that they do. And basically, I think they charge like $1 million to go and visit Buckingham Palace to a group of blockchain, crypto deal that was kind of went south. I mean, it didn't sound great to begin with. So the institution that represents centuries of ceremonial power is facing unprecedented scrutiny. This is not over. If the U.S. records expose institutional enablers or networks of access, the ripple effect goes far beyond one country. I believe that what's happening right now, They're going after the institutions. Yes. Forget the individuals. Because, I mean, unless you quit on your own, like, for example, okay, they took away his title. They pressured the king to get rid of everything that his brother had. The guy that lost his job recently was the ambassador to the U.S. From the UK, and there was some email, and basically he was saying he doesn't understand. It was an email that was addressed to Jeffrey Epstein after he was indicted, saying, I don't understand what they're doing to you. This is not fair. You're a good guy. Blah blah blah. And not that he himself had anything to do with the girls because of his, his inclination, of his sexual inclination. It was just that he basically said that he was basically a friend of, and even there was also an email from the former wife of former Prince Andrew, that basically said, after again Epstein was indicted, basically saying that, what, we're sorry we have to talk to you like this in public, but you have to understand, I have a children's book coming out, an email. I'm saying I don't like you, but frankly, I do like you at the end of the day. So more pressure. And then, of course, now coming out the fact that he went out on a trip. So inside the one key shift in this story is the focus is less on one bad actor and more on the institution and the system that allow abuse to happen. That's a major one. So we're going to see investigation into financial networks and platform of access. 2, questions about government oversight, law enforcement responses, and institutional inertia. A push to hold not just individual accountable, but to examine the architecture of elite privilege itself. How were they allowed? I mean, why would the founder, Les Waxler, right? He was the founder of The Limited. Why would he allow Epstein to have full control over his affairs? Why would the former head, Leon Black, $156 million he gave him to take care of his taxes? So inside the congressional drama is a high-stake political background as well. With the president and certain key Republicans, I framed the push for disclosure as a distraction, although that has changed since then. So you know what? Yes, I want that to be released. So some lawmakers are buckled under pressure. Others are signing the discharge petition despite the risk. This is a major, and of course it's coming months before the midterm elections. That could have a humongous impact, right? This could have a humongous impact on the elections in May, June, July. Be careful. Now, why should you care, right? Well, because this vote and the documents behind it tomorrow challenge the idea that there are 2 sets of rules, one for citizens and one for the powerful. If the files are released, and again, it was part of the administration agenda originally, besides the tariffs. If the files are released, they could shed light on how institutions protect themselves. Don't forget, they wanted to bring JP Morgan's CEO, and it's still possible, to Congress to answer a question. Bank of America is being sued, Bank of New York, because you financed this guy while you knew he was guilty. How access is broken and how power preserves itself. If the vote fails, that's going to be a problem. It sends a message that even a majority press's elite institution can still shield themselves. And don't forget, the president needs to sign that act of Congress, by the way, which now he says he will sign. So what do we need to track? Well, we need to track who's supporting, who's not supporting, what document is going to be happening, how the monarchy and other global constitutions responds. This is major. This is major as far as what's going on with the Epstein story, because there's a lot of things that are happening that frankly is not clear, right? And again, evidence of institutional systemic focus. This there's a name for it. It's called the Epstein Files Transparency Act, HR 4405. Is not just targeting a single person. That's one thing you have to realize. It will require the U.S. Department of Justice to release all documents relating to Epstein. Of course, they're going to have a problem, right? Because they say, but we release everything already. Now, this also, you have to realize, this could be a bit like the food situation, meaning that, lowering the tariffs are going to lower food prices. Well, you have to understand that, okay, you want everything? I'm going to release all the information, but we can't just put unredacted information out there. You may never be able to actually use it. Some leading members of Congress argue that the problem goes deeper. It's about how system of power and elite have turned a blind eye, right? The push for transparency include flight logs, financial records. That's why I think at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to indict anyone because, they're going to say, well, I went with this guy and I did this. Or blank the name of the woman, blank the name of the guy. You'll never know who did anything, right? That's why I don't think that anybody is going to be indicted. People are going to be very disappointed if they think they're going to see reams and reams of gory details of what they did to each other, because all of the victims' names are going to be blanked out. Virginia Jeffrey, right? She wrote a book recently, and she was going to name a bunch of people, and they weren't allowed to put it in there because you're going to get sued. You can't just say all these things about people just like that. No, that's not going to happen. But one thing is possible is that one thing you can't remove the name of the bank, right? You can't blank that out. That's going to be the difference. The difference is that you'll be able to see. They're going to, for example, that push for transparency is going to include flight logs, financial records, call logs, institutional communication, not only for the name of the individuals, right, but also the cash ledgers, the call logs of the Epstein estate. You're going to see where the money came from. How did he end up having $600 million? He wasn't the greatest stock picker in the world. He wasn't even a CPA. Right? So, and of course, the administration response is also framed in institutional terms, because the president asked the DOJ to investigate Epstein involvement and relationship with other people and institutions. So, by focusing on institution rather than only individuals, that's a very important distinction and strategically significant. Lawmakers and advocates are aiming for structural accountability. You can't remove the name of the bank. Right? It's not a victim. So how did the system allow this to happen? How did he make $600 million? What did these people give him all that money? How did he? Because it's been coming slowly through other means, and especially with the emails. But basically, they were like, whenever someone would visit the place, it would a $10,000 withdrawal from his account. Not 10,000, actually like 9,000. And then the money would go back in, and then another 8,000. Always keep it below 10,000 because anything above $10,000 cash transactions get recorded. So they kept it under 10. But of course, if you do 10 every 10 minutes or 10 every day, then they'll say, well, what's going on? How come you didn't say anything? Didn't you see all those transactions? Why didn't you flag this? Well, I kind of flagged it, but because he was an important customer, we kind of let it go. But did you know what you're allowed to happen? But by you allowing this transaction to go on and on and on and on. And that is what the problem is. So they want to know the role that the networks of power play. It makes the problem harder to sideline as a one bad actor. It's his fault. Forget that. It implicates broader network, institution, and possibly policy failures. It raises stake politically, obviously, because institutions are more diffuse and harder to defend than a single person. From a victim perspective, focusing on institutional failing offers a pathway to reform rather than just this retribution. Plus, of course, you have to look at that aspect as well, is that If you're suing a large bank, there's money there. If you're suing to put someone in jail, well, good luck. There are plenty of money. I mean, you have to prove all these things. But an institution, for example, institution is the former ambassador to the U.S. He just quit. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. But if you're being sued by all of these women all over again, and it's a lot more than we think, you'll just settle. I'll pay, I settle. That's what institutions do. So obviously there's more. So everyone is incentivized to keep this thing going because you're going to make some money. You're going to get retribution. We're going to make changes, right? Of course, the people that are going to get hit are institutions or whomever is preventing it from happening. For the longest time, the president was saying, well, I mean, this is ridiculous. There's no reason, blah, blah, blah. But now, you know what? Let's go for it. And no, why would he do that? I think he's doing it because, frankly, it's a humongous amount of information, and it's taking everyone, taking the balls away, the attention away from what he's trying to get done. Even Virginia Giuffre said that the president, he was the nicest guy ever. He's trying to get things moving, but unfortunately, by him saying no, it looks like, why you have something to hide, which is not the case. So the institutional focus is rising. Key individuals are under scrutiny. Politically, much of the public interest continues to ask, who knew what and which institution? So there is a clear shift. Overall, there is a meaningful shift toward institutional systemic focus, and it's not exclusive. The story retains its individual dimension and personality, but the narrative is broadening, and that's why it's very hard to contain. The institutional lens gives it more longevity and a bigger why. And of course, the Democrats will obviously love this because the longer this goes on and on and on and on, the closer you get to the midterm election, the more difficult it's going to be to say no. I mean, when you have Taylor Greene, which is a major MAGA person, that decided against it, right? She basically voted one of those few, because a lot of Republicans were under pressure not to vote for something like that, the 218 votes. And maybe she's opportunistic, maybe she sees the wind moving. She says, well, I love the president, but I still want to, I don't think it's right. And she signed it, and she lost his support, but the MAGA situation has been broken. The MAGA diamond has been broken because some of them are saying, we got to do something. We just can't let this happen and say nothing. And that is that's going to be the problem, right? Now. As far as the prince is concerned, okay, the prince has been on. I mean, he's nothing much left of him, right? I mean, between the report that Andrew regularly brought prostitutes into Buckingham Palace over several years, it's based on historian New Book. I mean, and it has not been independently verified by the palace. Basically, they're saying, can we not talk about this anymore? Okay, so he's gone. But what about you? Why did you allow this? Were you an enabler? Did you allow it? Right? Now, October 2025, the king and the palace announced formal process to strip him from his royal titles. Okay, so you're going after him, but you don't realize that now we are going after you. And that's the thing that's going to be a problem for everyone. We are going after the institution. And in this case, we are going after the institution of the monarchy. In June 2019, okay, Andrew organized a private tour of Buckingham Palace while the Queen was in residence by two American businessmen. And I knew one of them. He's an interesting guy, and I could see how he got into this situation from the crypto mining firm. Some crypto mining, doesn't matter the name, but they were also driven through the palace gates in his car, then attended the Pitch Palace event at St. James Palace, and later joined dinner with Andrew, his ex-wife Sarah, and daughter Beatrice. So, and for that, they got paid £1.4 million. So you see how far it goes, because if anybody were watching him or care about what he was doing, and say, what the heck are you doing? What are you doing? And he did it several times, over and over. And the latest one is this trip that he used to go to Thailand. And forget about it. This is even more wilder. No need to discuss, because we're making our point. The point being is that institutions are going to be impacted over and over and over. You could remove all his titles, but at the end of the day, that is what the government here, especially Congress, needs to worry about, because they need to come across clean. So whomever is trying to stop this thing from happening is going to be in a lot of trouble, I think. So let's make sure that we understand what is going on. But at the end of the day, that is going to be... So since we're talking about you, and that one